Alright, this video is a race tier list for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. And yes, it will be chock full of racism. So let's get started. We're going to go in alphabetical order. The first one we have is Argonians. Now, Argonians get immunity to poison, resist disease, and they can cast a spell that costs 5 magicka to let them breathe underwater for 2 minutes. And it has a 100% chance to cast that spell. Because they're barely even human and they're more beast-like, they cannot wear boots or shoes, and they can't wear closed helmets. So that means no boots of blinding speed or any boots at all. The resist poison is not bad. However, because poison is the most expensive damage type, it has a base cost of 9, which is almost double that of fire and frost, and still significantly more than shock. Poison damage will almost always be lower than the other elemental damage types. It also is far more rare, and so it's just not something that's going to help you a ton. There are a few traps throughout the game that it would be nice to have poison immunity for. However, most of those are longer in duration, and a cure poison on self costs 5 magicka. It's practically a free spell. It's not really something you have to worry about. I think it is very, very easy to overcome poison damage in this game, and so that resistance just doesn't really benefit you very much. As for resist disease, well, it's just not that common, and it's also a very cheap spell. It's just not something you really have to deal with, unless you're talking about a brand new player who just doesn't know the basics of the game. I do actually really like their skill spread. Medium armor with the spear and mysticism illusion. It's a fun type of playstyle. However, it's only +5 to all of them, and their big boost is athletics, which you might think, oh, athletics +15, I'll run faster. That's good. But their weights are 1.1 and 1.0, so they're much lighter than about 4 other races. So they will move slower, and we'll talk about the specifics of that when we get to other races. But functionally, Argonians are not great at anything. They're not better than anyone else at anything. The only thing they are really good at is that they have the cannon Nerevarine, and so that's going to put them up to C tier. In terms of gameplay, they are definitely F tier, but because they're clearly the one that met Dagoth and killed him for his racism, we're going to put them in C tier. Next, we have Bretons. Bretons have decent boosts. They're a lot better than Argonians. However, they are not nearly as powerful as they were in Oblivion. Resist magic in Morrowind is still useful because enemies will use attacks that damage your attributes or perhaps damage your fatigue or drain your magicka, and it reduces the effects of diseases. It's actually very potent and useful, but it does not lower fire, frost, and shock damage. It functions the same way as Daggerfall, where magic is separate from the elements. And it also doesn't even affect Paralyze. That's its own category as well. So resist magicka is okay. It's 50%. It's not bad, but it's nothing special. The magicka boost is pretty solid. It's 50% of your intellect, and their greater power is a pretty good defensive mechanism. 50 shield for 1 minute will keep you alive, especially early game, and even in that mid game if you don't have very good armor yet. Sometimes you'll get NPCs who are hitting you for 60 to 70 damage, and that 50 shield will allow you to just overpower them and beat them. All of their skill bonuses are useful and good, but they don't have a bonus to a weapon skill, which a lot of people don't like. And whether you are male or female, they only start with 30 endurance, which is a downside. But 50 intelligence and 50 willpower is not bad. 30 agility doesn't really matter because you're more of a mage. Like most races, being a female is just objectively worse. 10 strength is a lot worse to lose than 10 speed. And on top of that, the women are lighter. They weigh 0.9. So while the women have 10 more speed than the men, they move slower still because they're skinny. If you look at this calculator, even with 30 speed, a male Breton moves faster than a female Breton with 40 speed. It's just the way it is. For whatever reason, being skinny makes you worse. It's important to keep eating those hamburgers in Morrowind. Just know that in the future, when I'm talking about these races, I'm talking about the men, and that women are objectively inferior to men in Morrowind. Only in Morrowind. Don't take me out of context. We're talking about Morrowind. Guys, with all that said, I would put Breton at A tier. There are very strong arguments to put them in S tier. Depending on the playstyle you're looking for, though, they're not the best pick. They are a very great safe mage, and I think they're better than High Elves in a lot of ways, but they have a lot smaller of a magicka pool. The difference is larger than it was in Oblivion, and they're certainly not just the overall reigning king like they were in Oblivion. Next, we have Dark Elves, the Dunmer, and everyone in Morrowind is already a Dunmer. You're going to feel like you fit in, you belong, you're with your homies, but if you want to be a poser like that, sure, pick a Dark Elf. I think they really are the NWAs. That's why they call everybody else NWA, because they're hiding something. And if we look at their stats, they are okay. They get resist fire 75%, which is very nice. Actually, fire damage is probably the most common one that you're going to face, and this will help you just ignore a lot of the fire damage. And their greater power is pretty much identical to the Breton greater power. Once per day, you can gain 50 sanctuary for a minute, and 50 sanctuary means enemies will have a 50% lower chance to hit you. So if they had a 60% chance, they will go down to a 10% chance. And if they already had 50 or less, they just won't hit you. This can be a game changer. Make sure to use greater powers. Greater powers are very powerful. I showed it in my birth sign tier list, and I'll show it again in this video. If you're playing OpenMW, waiting 24 hours takes 2 seconds. If I use this character's greater power, it's going to last 1 full minute, and the second it wears out, I can just wait 24 hours or rest 24 hours. It doesn't matter, and it's done that quickly, and I can use it again. So this character is a Redguard. They're using Adrenaline Rush. It helps me run faster. Just use it whenever you want it. You get the boost for a full minute, and you can just wait 24 hours the second you want it back. Dark Elves have very average attributes with 50 in speed, which again, like Bretons, they have a 1.0 or a 0.9 speed multiplier, so they are one of the slowest races, and this is actually going to bring them down a notch. If you compare them to Bretons, instead of resisting magic, they resist fire. Instead of having a greater power for shield, they have a greater power for sanctuary. But they don't have that magical boost that Bretons have. So the only advantage they have over a Breton is if you care about resist fire over resist magic, and if you care about these small skill boosts. I think if this is the type of character you want, a Breton is just objectively better, and Breton isn't even S tier. Marksman sucks, Shortblade sucks, Destruction and Longblade can be good, but these gold costs right here are the most benefit you can get from a +5. So if you have +5 to Longblade and you chose it as your major skill and your within its specialization, that +5 would save you this much gold from trainers. +10 would save you this much gold at most from trainers, and +15 would save you this much gold at most. At worst, +5, well, that would equal just these 5 levels. If you don't pick it as your specialization, if it doesn't fall under a major or a minor skill, it's just a miscellaneous skill, it'll save you a whopping 350 gold. It's a total waste. So these are the best values, and these on the right are the worst values that they will save you. So +15 can actually be pretty good if it matches your major skills and your specialization, and +10 is not bad as well, but +5 really isn't enough for you to care too deeply about that. With all that said, Dark Elves are going to end up at B tier. Honestly, because they're so much worse directly than Bretons and they have that low movement speed, I think even a high C tier would be reasonable, but I'm going to leave them at the B tier. Next, we have the High Elves, the Snobby Altmer. Skyrim has always scarred me a little bit, where I have to kind of hate High Elves just a little bit, but there is no denying that the massive bonus to Magicka that they get is a game changer. They gain their intelligence times 1.5 extra Magicka. So normal character, everybody else gets their intelligence equal to their Magicka. This Nord has 30 int, he gets 30 Magicka. The High Elf with the starting 50 int starts with 125 Magicka, even if he does not pick a mage-related birth sign. Assuming he picks something like the Apprentice, he'd start at level 1 with a 200 Magicka pool, which is equivalent to the maximum that a Breton mage sign could start with 100 intellect. A Breton without a magical birth sign at 100 intellect would have less than your level 1 high elf character. And that is again double what a Nord character could possibly have without enchantments, alchemy, or special gear just at level 1. You are really a magical behemoth as a high elf. This fortified Magicka is massive. With that said, these weaknesses are way worse than they were in Oblivion. Resist disease, nobody cares about that. That sucks. We already talked about that. Weakness to shock 25 and frost 25%, those are the same. Weakness to fire, which is the most common damage type in the game, was bumped up from 25 to 50%, and this will get you killed unless you're a good player. I'm too reckless. This will definitely get all of my high elves killed at least once. If I'm doing a hardcore run, I'm done for as a high elf. Weakness to magic of 50%, it's not as bad, it won't kill you as much, but it can be inconvenient and annoying. Damage attributes will be worse. Those bone walkers who damage your strength, and it makes it so you can't move because you're over encumbered, those attributes will be damaged 1.5 times. That will suck. If you want to put on the Boots of Blinding Speed, 100% resist is not enough. You'll have to do 2 custom spells of resist for a couple seconds. That's not a big deal. You can do it. Just know these weaknesses, they don't come at a low cost. They are massive. It is unlike Oblivion, where those elemental weaknesses can just be made up with resist magic or spell absorb in some way. Now you are also weak to magic, and even if you get magic resist, it won't help you with that weakness to fire. Now with that said, you can pick the Astronach Burst Sign, and that will give you 50% spell absorb, which will mostly negate all of this. You just won't be that afraid of spells anymore. A couple unlucky rolls with some non-absorbed fire attacks will still kill you, but it'll be very, very rare that that happens. They get plus big boost to magical skills. Their attributes are fine. They're pretty reasonable. The men have 40 endurance to start, which is pretty nice. Their carry weight's a little annoying. Honestly, when I play a high elf, I start with strength and endurance as my favorite attributes because it's not going to be hard to get my int and willpower up. I'm going to be using those skills a lot, all of the magical skills, and it's nice to start with the bonus 10 health, start with 50 bonus carry weight, start with a little bit extra endurance, so as I gain those levels, I gain a decent amount of health, even if I'm not power level my endurance. Their weight, it's 1.0 no matter what. So they're actually slow, even though they're tall, because there's some skinny hoes. High elves are slow. They're one of the slowest races. I mean, the past 3 we've talked about have all been slow, and that is annoying. With that said, high elves do something better than any other race because of that massive magical pool. And so they're between, in my opinion, a high B and a low A. I'm going to put them below Breton, but still in that same tier. High elves are awesome because of what they bring to the table. They're unique. If you've never played a high elf, play a high elf. They're a lot of fun. Oh, one thing I should quickly add, don't ever pick the high elf with the mage birth sign. It's just like picking the Breton apprentice in Oblivion. If you do that in Oblivion, you have more weaknesses than a high elf mage with the same magical pool. If you pick a high elf mage, you have the same magical pool as a Breton apprentice, but you still have a bunch of weakness to elements and magic that you wouldn't have as a Breton. So the Breton apprentice is just a way better pick than a high elf mage. So if you go for high elf, you have to go all in. and not just do that weak ass high elf mage. Go astronaut, go apprentice, go balls deep. You can't do just the tip. Okay, next we have Imperial, which I think are pretty good. A lot of people think they're kind of bad because they start with 50 personality and they're losing out on some agility or willpower, and they don't really value speechcraft and mercantile. But I think simply starting with 50 personality and this Voice of the Emperor spell allows you to get everyone at the beginning of the game to a very high disposition. Remember, with Charm, you can wait 24 hours and charm them again, and that happens very quickly. This allows you to get way better prices, way cheaper services, and certain quests that are normally annoying, you have to bribe people, spend a lot of gold, you can just use this and get it done. This charm spell costs 150 magicka as well, so it's a very difficult to cast one. Now, if you ever made your own charm spell, it would only have one duration, but even a 1 second duration of that Voice of the Emperor spell would still cost 18.75. That one's on target. This is if it's on touch. So it'd actually be 1.5 times as much of this because of the target multiplier. But assuming you're not using it on hostile enemies and you're using it in town as a way to get better prices, if you made your own version of the spell, it would be on touch for a 1 second duration because the game pauses when a menu's open. That still is not very cheap, and if you have low illusion skill, you simply cannot cast a spell that costs almost 19 magicka. This also makes him a decent astronaut candidate because you don't have to waste resources to do things like charm, you just have it built in as a greater power. And you get it at the beginning of the game before you ever buy this spell. The cheapest charm spell you can buy costs 225 magicka, and remember the gold cost is 7 times that to buy that spell. That's how gold cost is typically calculated. So it's a very expensive spell to buy, and Imperials just get it. They start with it. They also get a greater power called Star of the West, which is absorb 200 fatigue on target. This can be really good if you're ever caught with your pants down. When that Dark Brotherhood assassin shows up and you have no fatigue and you have no magicka and you're just not ready for a fight, absorb his fatigue and it's a massive swing. So in this hypothetical scenario where my character has 50 skill and 40 agility going up against an opponent with 60 agility and 40 luck, which is totally reasonable, at no fatigue I would have a 16.5% chance to hit them because my chance to hit is multiplied by 0.75 and his evasion rating is multiplied by 1.25. If I cast that Star of the West spell, bringing my fatigue to max, well, just my fatigue going to max brings me up to a 47.5 chance to hit, and lowering their fatigue to 0 brings their evasion rating down, bringing me up to over a 50% chance to hit. So I'll put the difference in a percentage on the side over here. Hopefully it's big enough for you to see. I'll zoom in. The difference between me having 0 fatigue and my opponent having full fatigue versus the total swing of that where I gain max fatigue and they gain 0, I gain over a 300% chance to hit. Well, I gain 236% more chance to hit. It's over tripling my percent chance to hit. It's a massive difference. It will make or break a fight. You can go from totally getting dominated by an opponent to wrecking their shit, and they'll start missing you all the time now because your evasion rating is higher and their hit chance is way lower. You just do the opposite equation, which if you didn't know, puts them at about a 29.7% chance to hit compared to what they were at. So even if they were at 100% chance to hit, now they would be down to 29. They weren't at 100 before. They were probably at 40%, and now they're at 11 or 12% if that's the case. It's a big swing. It will make or break the game, honestly, all the way through early to mid-game. It's a nice absorb fatigue thing to do, and you can just wait 24 hours between fights if you need to always have it at the ready for yourself. They also have some decent combat bonuses. You can just use Longblade. They start with plus 10. That's not a bad idea. Picking a combat specialization and Longblade is a major. They have the second to highest bonus in the game for Longblade. All of this taken together, they're missing out on the magicka bonus. They're missing out on resistances. So there's one thing we have to check. 1.25 weight. They are chunky boys. Because of that, I really do like Imperials. I think there's an argument for low A tier or high B tier. Either of those would be reasonable. I think if I put them in A tier, my A tier is going to be really stacked, and I like symmetrical tier lists, so I'm going to put them at high B tier. But honestly, if you put them in A tier, I would agree with that as well. Next, we have Khajiit, and now Khajiit are the other beast race. Like Argonians, they cannot wear shoes or closed helmets. They're also disgusting furries, and they bring great shame to the House Unmourned. We'll quickly go over their stuff. They have Demoralized Humanoid, which is an expensive spell because it's 100 points for 30 seconds on target. So that spell will cost 232 magicka to cast. However, it just makes a humanoid run away. You can do once per day. And sometimes when you do it in the game, and maybe you haven't had this experience, but enemies start fighting you when you're hitting them. And greater powers are pretty much always this expensive. The Dark Elf Sanctuary spell would cost 152. The Breton Shield would cost 305 if you cast it as a spell. And Demoralize is just not that useful. I mean, the pre-bot spells cost 3 and 4. They're basically free. Obviously, you'd have to up the magnitude if you wanted it to do anything. But when you make people run away, they usually just gather more people and then come and fuck you up. Their attributes are fine, I guess. But 30 endurance for the men, so you want to be a girl. But then if you pick a girl, you only have 30 strength, which is bad. On top of that, the girls have a 0.95 weight, where the men only have a 1.0 weight, so they're slow. You can't get the boots of blinding speed. Their attributes are bad. Their skills, plus 15 to acrobatics, I guess that's cool, but acrobatics is one where I wouldn't even say you're saving a bunch of gold because the first levels are actually kind of fast to just level up jumping up a hill. It's not until you get to like 40 or 50 anyway that acrobatics starts to slow way down and become really difficult to level. The best thing about acrobatics in this game is that it's governed by strength, meaning you can level up by using trainers or jumping around to then gain strength as an attribute. That's why acrobatics is good in Morrowind. Falls also count for 20 jumps worth of experience. You need it actually pretty high, usually fortifying it through magical means to make it actually really useful. So that 15 just isn't making a big difference. Hand to hand is kind of a meme skill. I wish it was better, but it's not. Security is pretty god awful. Short blade's one of the worst weapon types. Light armor is fine, I guess. Sneak is fine. Night Eye is basically worthless. These farm tools are low F. I honestly could not imagine making worse rates. And it's actually kind of frustrating because they are more unique than the others. They're not a human. They're not an elf. They're Khajiit. And it would be nice if both Morrowind and Oblivion had better beast races. Like, they both suck in both games. Like, really? These are kind of really cool, really unique races. I know I made the furry joke, but I like playing a feral druid in World of Warcraft. It's fun to play something totally different, not human at all sometimes. And when I'm playing a Khajiit, I just feel like I'm gimping myself. I'm playing a really garbage, weak character that's worse than literally every other race by a pretty significant margin just because I want to be like Maik the Liar or something. Like, there's not even any cool Khajiit characters. You're just a slave farming tool. Dagothor was right. Khajiit is far worse than Argonian. It must be the moon sugar. It must be the skooma. The one good thing about Khajiits is they will buy moon sugar and skooma from you, so you can get gold from those. I think that's about the only good thing I've ever got from these farm tools. Next, we have Nord, which is the original Giga Chad. These Vikings are pretty powerful as a warrior race. They start with 50 strength and endurance. They're not very smart. They're not very agile. And both genders have low personality. Generally speaking, you'd pick between axe or blunt weapons and wear medium or heavy armor because they have good bonuses to all of that. And their resistances are 3 times as powerful as they were in Oblivion. In Oblivion, they have 50% frost resist. Here, they have frost immunity as well as 50% shock resist. On top of that, they have greater powers, frost damage 25 points on touch, and shield 30 points for 60 seconds on self. Now, that Thunder Fist is only 12.5 magicka cost spell. It's a very cheap spell, but at level 1, when you're getting jumped, it's nice to have just a way to deal 25 damage to something. And that shield spell would cost 183 magicka. It's not as good as the Bretons, but typically as a Nord, you just have more armor anyway because you have that bonus plus 10 to medium armor, maybe plus 5 to heavy. You start with higher strength, so you're able to train those skills easier. With that high strength and endurance, you'll have a higher health pool because of that high starting endurance. They're pretty solid warriors. With all that said, they're pretty locked in as a warrior. If you want to branch out into magic, you probably have to pick the apprentice sign or do something like that. Even something as simple as casting Mark and Recall would probably be too difficult for them. While those spells cost 18 magicka, at level 1 with their willpower and luck and just 5 mysticism skill, they would have a 3% chance of casting the spell with full fatigue. So they'd need to use some trainers, and even then 5 to 10 more mysticism skill isn't going to get you up to 20-30% chance to succeed casting these spells. And with only 30 intelligence, you're not going to have enough magicka to actually cast them more than once until you actually gain that intelligence. I think ultimately what I like about Nords is that late game, I typically kill myself with Spell Reflect. If I want to be a Nord, I can use frost damage spells, and well, those can't reflect. There's also a way to get around that with Absorb Health. Absorb Health spells on touch don't reflect. I've heard people say that Absorb Health on target can't be reflected either, but I haven't tested that in Morrowind yet, so who knows? Someone can let us know in the comments. Last thing to look at is their weight, and the men weigh as much as Imperials, 1.25, tied for the second heaviest boys, and so these big boys are pretty quick. With all that said, I think they fit squarely in A tier. Those elemental resistances are not nearly as good as people make them out to be. The starting high endurance isn't really that amazing. It's nice, but it's not great. And so they're a fantastic warrior, but there's just something missing with having no magic whatsoever, that they're just not amazing. Okay, next we have Orc, and these are a very unique one, and it's interesting, and I love the way Morrowind does Orcs. 50 endurance, 45 strength, pretty solid. 50 willpower, only 30 speed. You might think, oh, only 30 speed, that's a big downside. However, these are the heaviest race, 135 weight, 1.35 weight. It makes a big difference. Okay, there's a lot of numbers here and this might be confusing, but what I want you to see is that an Orc with 30 speed, don't worry so much about the athletics and worn weight, I'm not going to change those. At 30 speed with these other variables, they move at 295 run speed. A Breton Dark Elf or Bosmer female with 95 speed, 295.9, remember that number, moves at the same amount. 95 speed. They gain 65 speed attribute and they move the same speed as an Orc male. Absolutely ridiculous. On top of that, because of their high strength, chances are an Orc will have a higher max carry weight, meaning a lower encumbrance. or a closer to 1 modifier. Orc skill bonuses are reasonable. You can just pick axe if you want, but you don't have to. You could use block, you could repair your gear, but again, you don't have to. You probably want to wear heavy or medium armor because those are the better armor skills anyway, unless you're really worried about movement. But again, an orc has this great movement modifier that they will move faster. Orcs have a natural 25% resist magic, which is not that great, but it's not terrible, I guess. And they have a very unique ability called Berserk. This fortifies their health, fatigue, and attack. Fortify attack 100 gives you just a flat 100% chance to hit. It's not modified by fatigue, so the only way you will ever miss is if they have a good evasion skill. Essentially, you would have needed to have a 0% chance to hit them before you cast Berserk to ever miss. It does drain your agility, but mostly what agility does is it increases your chance to hit and it increases your chance to evade. So Berserk is a dangerous thing. You will get hit more and it can make you fall down, which can be very annoying. What a lot of people don't realize is that you can use it with bow and arrow, and because it's Fortify Attack 100, your hit chance will be very good. Even with only 5 marksman skill and 0 agility, you'll still hit most of the time. And as you do it, your marksman skill will go up. Now, this isn't amazing, but you can kite enemies and stay alive, so you don't have to worry about getting knocked down. Arrow damage is based on your strength in Morrowind, not your agility, so you are able to kill enemies with it. On top of that, if you do get into melee combat and you want to actually do your high damage with your axe, well, you're always going to hit. You have a ton of fatigue because of the Fortify Fatigue. Fortify Attack 100 is just going to make you always hit, and you are fast, meaning you're able to get in and out. You do get knocked down sometimes, though, and it does suck, and it can lead you to die. It really is Berserk. You are going Berserk. You are more susceptible to getting ganked. You fall down, you die. It's over. You're going to lose if you fall down a lot, but you're going to hit everybody a whole bunch. This weapon I'm using does 80 damage with a full swing because it's just a bound weapon. But I also want to talk more about exactly Fortify Fatigue and how Berserk can function outside of combat. Fatigue as a formula takes your current fatigue, divides it by your maximum fatigue, and then divides that by 2. That is then added to 0.75. So at 0 fatigue, it's 0.75. At half fatigue, it's 1, and at full fatigue, your multiplier is 1.25. Now, this multiplier happens to your hit chance, your evasion chance, your spell cast chance, your lockpick chance, your repair chance, your chance to create a potion, your chance to enchant an item. Fatigue has a lot of consequences, and it doesn't just include combat. If you use Berserk, your agility will be set to 0. So if I have these sample stats, 60 strength, 60 willpower, and 80 endurance, that could happen at a fairly early game after gaining a handful of levels. Well, my fatigue will be fortified by 200, meaning my current fatigue will become 400, but my max fatigue will only be 200 because my agility will be drained and set to 0. That will change that multiplier to 1.75. Stack on top of that a Fortify Fatigue spell, even a 1 second. Fortify Fatigue 100 points by 1 second, and we get a 2 times multiplier. And you might think, well, any character could do Fortify Fatigue 100 points for 1 second. While that's true, most characters don't have 0 agility. So if this character had 60 agility and only fortified their fatigue by 100, well, we would be going from 1.25 to 1.44 as a multiplier. Not that impressive. But going from 1.25 to 2 actually is a pretty solid multiplier. Using Berserk and that 1 second Fortify Fatigue spell will dramatically improve your chance to make a potion, pick a lock, or really do anything. And because it is so quick to wait 24 hours, this is something you can do before you even barter, before you cast any spell. If you're struggling, like I was talking about the Nord who might be struggling to cast a mark or a recall spell, well, Berserk will even help the orc do it. In fact, using Berserk before casting that Fortify Fatigue spell will even increase the chance of him casting that successfully. This allows the orc to be a lot more of a well-rounded character. And if you're ever really screwed in a ton of danger, you can just use Berserk, whip out your bow, and shoot somebody as you run away. I think in combination with their heavy weight and the utility that Berserk can provide, and just how fun it is to always hit someone during the span of that Berserk, and it is that give and take, it's a lot of fun. I think I always have the most fun when I play an orc, and so while arguably they might not be the best, I'm going to put them in S tier just because I love being a chunky, big chungus boy, running fast, killing my enemies, and having all that utility with Berserk. My favorite character ever has always been an Orc Apprentice sign because you still have that big magical pool to just do some crazy shit with. And so I really love Orcs. Even if they maybe aren't arguably the very best warrior, they're just great as a character who feels like you can do a lot of different things. Next we have Redguard, and they are interesting. Redguards have resist poison and disease, which I think is just meh. It's not very good at all. Their strength comes from the fact that they have plus 15 to Longblade, which is the biggest bonus to a weapon skill other than Wood Elves, which we'll talk about next. They're tied with them. They have 50 strength and endurance to start. However, they have low intelligence and willpower and personality, so they're bad casters. They're just great as warriors. Kind of like Nords, they're really focused in on being a warrior. Their adrenaline rush is fun. It's nice to be able to run even 50 speed faster for 60 seconds with adrenaline rush. You can wait 24 hours when it ends. It actually helps you just traveling around town. And that 50 strength is a boatload of carry weight. So if you're just bartering between people in town, you're trying to do stuff, Adrenaline Rush is actually really good for convenience in that case. In combat, Adrenaline Rush, well, 50 agility is 10% chance to hit. 50 strength is a big damage boost. Going from 50 to 100 strength is a 50% damage increase. So if your weapon does 40 damage, well, with 100 strength, it's going to deal 60. I don't want to show the formula because I'm getting tired. Agility, strength, and endurance all add 1 point to fatigue. So your max fatigue and current fatigue all go up by 150. So your multiplier for fatigue won't go down very quickly. You are far more likely to hit people. With Longblade at plus 15, you can start with 50 Longblade. You can go get a 6 magic cost Conjure Longblade spell. If you successfully cast it, it fortifies your Longblade by another 10, giving you 60 skill. When you use Adrenaline Rush, you will have a 90 agility, which is plus 14 more chance to hit at a 74% chance to hit, and you will have high fatigue. It will probably be multiplied by 1.2, giving you more than 80%. I think that's 84% chance to hit. And we're talking about a level 1 character. A Bound Longsword can do up to 44 damage, and because you now have 100 strength due to that Fortify strength, at level 1, this is dealing 66 damage if you slash it at full power, and almost hitting every single time. That's absolutely insane for a level 1 character. Redguards at level 1 are the most powerful character you're going to make. They just wreck people. It's totally out of control. With that said, their weight is only a 1.1 and a 1.0. They are slower than Imperials, they're slower than Nords, and they're way slower than Orcs. It is noticeable and it makes a difference. I'll show a side by side with the next guys because they're short and skinny no matter which gender you pick. This plus 5 to athletics doesn't feel good when you don't have that high multiplier. And while plus 15 to Longblade is great, these guys like the Nords are really locked in as just warriors. And you won't always have Adrenaline Rush. There will be times where you don't have it. And while you'll still be great at hitting people, you can have Bound Longsword if you want. Their lack of bonus to movement speed that Orcs have, their low weight, honestly, I think what brings them down a bit. I know it's getting to be a crowded tier, but I would put them about the same as Nords in A tier, depending on how you value Adrenaline Rush. I do like Adrenaline Rush, but I think Bretons beat them out. And while Berserk has some downsides, Berserk can be really good if you want to use a bow. It can allow you to use an off weapon. It has that more utility focus with Fortify Fatigue. Resist Magic is way better than Resist Poison and Resist Disease. And really what pushes Orcs up the tier is that heavy weight. It's a big deal. It's very noticeable. And lastly, we have Wood Elves. They are worse than Khajiit. They are the worst race in the game, and we're going to talk about them for a little bit. Wood Elves, no matter what, start with 30 strength and then 30 endurance. That's 30 starting health. They start with 50 speed, but because they don't weigh anything, they're the slowest race ever. It's the same problem as Oblivion. The only reason you would ever pick this race is because they have plus 15 to marksman and plus 10 to sneak. And you might think, oh, I really want to be an archer. I want to be a stealth archer, and they have bonus to sneak and marksman. However, marksman in Morrowind is not very fun. You still can miss. And if you're like me and you're just not very good at aiming, you're going to miss yourself. And then when you actually hit the enemy, it's going to go right through him and not even hit him again. And you're just going to lose the arrow. You also, to be really good at it, have to pick the stealth specialization, which is just way garbage compared to combat or magic. Like, it's way, 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 way worse. There's so many powerful magical things, and it's really nice to have powerful combat skills. Picking stealth, it's just garbage. It makes you suck. You're good at speechcraft, as a Bosmer, and seriously, listen to how they sound.
From where do you hail, friend?
Disgusting. Here's an orc with 55 speed and 5 athletics. Here's my wood elf with 60 speed and 5 athletics. The orc is literally a full 50% faster than that wood elf girl. It's embarrassing. It's terrible. It's awful. 1 out of 10. Would never play a wood elf. Also, okay. The fact is, if I'm being honest, I'm biased. I don't like wood elves. If you actually want to play an archer, because they have that plus 15, it's a decent way to start. They still would be in a B tier. Maybe even C as an archer. Their command beast is not very good. It's a very expensive spell, but you get a level 5 creature to follow you for 10 minutes? It's cool as a concept, and I wish Oblivion made it even better, but they made it even worse, which is embarrassing. Okay, seriously, I can't help myself. The blue line here is those 0.9 races. Female Wood Elves, female Bretons, female Dark Elves. The red line is the male Orc. Green is the baseline 1.0 multiplier for weight. The X value is different speeds. So at 50 speed and the same athletics, this is assuming 20 athletics, here's the movement speed, the base run speed, that 263 of a female wood elf. It's almost 400 for the male orc. Proportionally, the gap stays the same, but if you get the Boots of Blinding speed and we're talking in the 200s range, you're moving at 900 versus 600. If you're not getting the Boots of Blinding speed and you're a slow, light race, even at 100 speed, you are so slow. This is slower, 351, than an orc with 34 speed. 34. 100 speed is slower than 34 speed attribute. just because of your weight, just because you're big chungus. I seriously get so annoyed playing a skinny girl in this game. There is a setting in Open Morrowind that you can normalize the racial speeds, and that would completely change the tier list, but this tier list does factor those in. If I was trying to be a bit more objective and remove my own personal bias, Argonians would be down here, Wood Elves would be up here, and High Elves would probably be down here, with Dark Elves bumped up above Imperials. You could argue about Bretons or Redguards being moved up as well, depending on how much you like different greater powers. But seriously, Argonians are really cool, and Wood Elves, again, hear this voice.
From where do you hail, friend?
And it just isn't very fun to play a Stealth Archer in Morrowind. That is what Wood Elves are good at. 15 Marksman, 10 Sneak. They're the only ones who get those kind of bonuses. And man, Marksman is a pain in Morrowind. The only time I ever use it is as an orc with the Berserk power going. I'm not going to miss an arrow and watch it go through someone. That's just, no, not happening. So this is the final tier list. These top 5 races are all phenomenal and really good. The Imperial and Dark Elf are also really good. They're just a little bit behind those top 5 races. Argonians, Khajiit, sadly, they're beast races. They're not even human. They're just garbage. And Wood Elves, I don't like them, so they're staying in F tier. All right, thanks for watching.